Thank you for listening to the Golden State Media Concepts basketball podcast, where we discuss all of the news in the world of the NBA and college basketball. My name is Ben Brown. I'm in the studio alone today. Pauline is not here, and she won't be here for a while. She is leaving for Hawaii tomorrow, so I'm definitely a little jealous of Pauline. I've never been to Hawaii. It is on my bucket list to go there. I'm sure I'll go there eventually, but I have never gone there, and I really would like to, and I'm really jealous of her. So, hope she has fun, and we'll have to talk to her next week to see how she liked it. Anyways, we're going to kick off right here in the show, starting right away. We're talking about games last night within the NBA, as well as games tonight in the NBA. We'll talk some college basketball in the second segment. We have a huge college basketball matchup tonight. Number 2, Baylor versus number 3, Kansas. Talk about some scores as well as preview that game. And then to end the show, we'll talk about some news within the NBA. LeBron James and Charles Barkley have had this kind of, I guess you can say, emotional and heated back and forth within the last few days. Talk about what Charles Barkley had to say yesterday about LeBron James' comments. And then there are reports that DeMarcus Cousins could be traded to the Phoenix Suns. We'll talk about what that deal could consist of and more. So first off, we're going to talk about news within the NBA and games within the NBA. Last night, the Washington Wizards picked up a victory 117-101 over the New York Knicks. Bradley Beal had 28 points, 4 assists, and 2 boards for the Wiz. And for the Knicks, Carmelo Anthony, 26 points and 5 rebounds. The Wizards, 28-20. The Knicks, 21-29. I feel like the Wizards just might be that dark horse team in the Eastern Conference, a lot like what we saw with them 2 years ago in the playoffs. This is the Wizards' 15th straight home win last night. They have a great backcourt in Beal and John Wall. I feel like they might be a little dark horse team come playoff time, a team that might be able to at least win one series, maybe push Toronto or Boston to be that second, third best team in the Eastern Conference and really challenge Cleveland. I don't think Cleveland will really be challenged in the Eastern Conference side, but with how they're playing right now and playing recently, I mean, I guess there's a chance, right? I mean, they just aren't really playing all that well. The Wizards, on the other side, playing extremely well. The Raptors had to go to overtime, but they do defeat the New Orleans Pelicans 108-106. The Raptors not really playing too well as of late, so a big win here. They improved to 30-19. The Pelicans dropped to 19-30. Kyle Lowry, literally clutch, last-second buzzer, 33 points, 10 assists, and 4 rebounds. Drew Holiday had a very good game for the Pelicans. He had 30 points, 3 assists, and 2 rebounds. The Rockets returned back to their winning ways, and they smashed the Kings 105-83. The Rockets now 36-13. The Kings technically still vying for the 8th seed in the West at 19-30. DeMarcus Cousins, the guy we'll talk about later in the show, he had 16 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists. And then Ryan Anderson off the bench, really key, good bench player for Houston. 25 points, 11 rebounds, and 3 assists. The Spurs, they rely on Kawhi Leonard heavily with his 36 points to beat the Thunder 108-94. Russell Westbrook did not have a triple-double, just a double-double in this game. 27 points, 14 assists, and 6 rebounds. Kawhi Leonard, to go with his 36 points, had 8 rebounds and 4 assists. The Thunder really, I mean, even with Steven Adams, even with Enes Kanter, who got injured on Thursday last week, I didn't think they were that great of a team. And now without him, they're even that much worse. They simply just cannot get anything going. It's a one-man team. They're playing 1-on-5 practically because Westbrook gets no help because there's no one around him. And the Thunder, I mean, I hate to say it, but they had their run. They were in the finals. They lost to LeBron James in Miami. They should have gone to the finals last year, but they blew a 3-1 lead against Golden State. I hate to say it, but the Thunder, they're just simply not a good team right now. 28-21. They're 12-15 on the road. So I mean, they're a pretty good home team. 16-6 at home, but on the road they just simply can't get it done. The Trailblazers, a 115-98 victory over the Charlotte Hornets. Damian Lillard definitely upset. He's not an all-star. He had 27 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists. And then on the other side, a first-time all-star, Kemba Walker, He had 22 points, 5 assists, and 3 rebounds. And then the Lakers finally get back to their winning ways. They squeak by the Nuggets with a 120-116 victory. The Lakers snap a 3-game losing streak, so they improve to 17-34. The Nuggets drop to 21-26. D'Angelo Russell led the way for the Lakers. 22 points, 10 assists, and 7 rebounds. A very good game for the young man out of Ohio State. And Wilson Chandler over for Denver had 26 points, 9 rebounds, and 4 assists. So a really good game there. As far as games upcoming tonight, it is Wednesday, February 1st. I can't believe it's already February. This whole 2017 so far has been going on extremely, extremely fast, and we are rampant here in the NBA. So tonight, the Pacers will battle the Orlando Magic down in the Amway Center in Orlando, Florida. The Timberwolves will battle the Cavaliers. Tonight could be interesting post-game as far as what LeBron James might say. I know the media will be asking him about Charles Barkley's comments yesterday, which we'll talk about in the last segment of the show, what Charles had to say about LeBron. So interesting to see if LeBron has any further comments, anything to sort of maybe end it, or if he just obviously stops it there. The Raptors will be battling the Celtics, definitely the best matchup of the night in the NBA. Really, probably the one of these two teams is going to challenge the Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference Finals, who it may be. A good point guard matchup between Isaiah Thomas for Boston and Kyle Lowry for Toronto. The Raptors did play last night, had to go to overtime, so I would imagine they'd be a lot more tired than Boston would be, so I'd probably give the edge to the Celtics tonight. I think they'll probably get the job done and win the game. The Knicks will battle the Nets, so a battle of New York. The Hawks will take on the Miami Heat. The Pelicans will be taking off against the Pistons. The 76ers and Joel Embiid will take on the Dallas Mavericks. The Memphis Grizzlies will battle the Denver Nuggets. The Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis Antetokounmpo will take on the Utah Jazz, led by Gordon Hayward, both those guys all-stars. The LA Clippers will take on the Phoenix Suns out in Phoenix. The Chicago Bulls will battle Russell Westbrook and the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then the Warriors will be back in action. Interested to see if Steph Curry plays tonight or not. He's been battling some sicknesses, a little bit of minor injuries as well. They'll be taking on the Charlotte Hornets. We'll take our first break of the show right now. After the break, we're going to transition over to talk about the college basketball game. We have the new top 25. We have a new team, number 1. Their second time atop the top 25 list all time. Talk about some games last night as well as preview some tonight. The big one, number 2 Kansas versus number 3 Baylor. Talk about college hoops right after the break at the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Gonzaga, for their second time in school history, are the number 1 ranked team within the AP Top 25. They are the only unbeaten team left in college basketball, so it definitely makes sense. The Zags are 22-0. They received 46 first-place votes as the top team within college basketball. They are now ranked number 1. I'm sure it'll be a spot, of course, unless they lose. They're going to stay atop, and I would imagine they would stay there for a while. They won't really face much competition in the WCC. I'm sure maybe come conference tournament time, if they have everything wrapped up, if they feel like they are going to have a number 1 seed, perhaps they might rest some players, depending on how valuable and important a unbeaten season may be to them. I know Kentucky tried that a couple years back and then lost in the Final Four to Wisconsin. So we'll have to wait and see what Gonzaga do. But for now, they are the 5th team this season to be ranked number 1, and Gonzaga at 22-0. Baylor comes in second. They have 6 first-place votes. Kansas, number 3. They had 9 first-place votes. Villanova are 4th with 4. Arizona out on the Pac-12 are the highest Pac-12 team. They're at 5. They've been playing really, really well since Alonzo Trier came back. Number 6 is Louisville. Number 7, West Virginia. Number 8, Kentucky. Number 9, Virginia. And number 10, Wisconsin. The ACC continues to dominate this list. So many ACC schools within the top 25. They have 7, led by number 6, Louisville, as I mentioned. ACC is really the best conference in college basketball this year, whether it be Louisville, Duke is still alive, Virginia's always consistent, Florida State's been good, Maryland's been good, Notre Dame, although they did lose over the weekend, has been really good. The ACC is really, really dominant this year, and I feel like they'll probably be the conference that has the most teams representing the NCAA tournament come Selection Sunday. So speaking of some games within college basketball, let's look at games that happened last night within the top 25. Number 7, West Virginia pick up an 85-72 victory over Iowa State. West Virginia now 18-4, led by Bob Huggins. They played really, really well. They have wins over Kansas and Baylor. They're always good come tournament time. Bob Huggins' team, they remind me a lot of Tom Izzo with Michigan State, although Michigan State's not really good this year. They're always really well coached, have a few good stars on their team, always play well come tournament time. I feel like they're definitely going to be a team we need to watch out for, a team that's very, very capable of making a Final Four run. Nathan Adrian led the way for the Mountaineers last night. He had 23 points and 11 rebounds. Number 8, Kentucky did have to go to overtime at Rupp Arena to hold off the Georgia Bulldogs, but they do win 90-81. Freshman standout Malik Monk had another great game, especially in overtime. He had 37 points, 3 rebounds, and 1 assist. Number 10, Wisconsin win 57-43 over Illinois. Ethan Happ led the way for Wisconsin. He had 14 points and 13 rebounds. Number 12, North Carolina, off their loss over the weekend against Miami. They rebound, although it was a very close game against Pittsburgh. They only won by 2, 80-78. Isaiah Hicks played well for the Tar Heels. He had 18 points and 8 rebounds. A matchup within the top 25 last night in the Big East. 2 of the mid-majors now in really big conferences are Creighton and Butler. They matched up last night. Creighton goes on the road to defeat Butler 76-67. Justin Patton for Creighton led the way. He had 15 points, 7 rebounds. And Keelan Martin for Butler was their best performer. He had 11 points, 8 rebounds, and 1 assist. Number 17, Maryland continued to impress. They now impressed to and improved to 20-2 overall, 8-1 within the Big Ten, with a 77-71 victory on the road against Ohio State. Justin Jackson led the way for the Terrapins. He had 22 points and 12 rebounds. Tonight, of course, February 1st, there's a few matchups in the top 25, but none bigger than the matchup between number 2 Baylor and number 3 Kansas. The game is in Allen Fieldhouse in Kansas. I will give the edge to the Jayhawks tonight. They definitely showed me a lot over the weekend when they went into Kentucky, into Rupp Arena, in a hostile environment. They were down at halftime, and they got the job done. They come back in the second half and win the game. So I will give the edge to Kansas. I think they're probably just a better team. Baylor haven't really played nearly as tough of a schedule as the Jayhawks, and I don't think they have as much experience and leadership. Look at Kansas. You have Frank Mason III. You have Josh Jackson. A couple of really good players in the backcourt there. I'll give the edge to Kansas tonight. I think they should be able to beat Baylor. Although Baylor's been really good all year. They have only the one loss on their resume, which was, of course, to West Virginia. So they're not just a pushover. It's not like they're just going to come in and let Kansas run all over them. I will give the edge to Kansas, though. They're at home, hostile environment, and I think they're just a better team. I think Kansas, I talked about it with Pauline on Monday. I think Kansas really is the best team in college basketball, and I feel like they are going to show that tonight and defeat Baylor. Some other games within the top 25. Number 4, Villanova will be on the road against Providence. Have to see how Josh Hart and company fare there. Number 15, Michigan State will be playing unranked Miami. Miami, of course, coming up with the upset over the weekend against North Carolina. We'll have to see if they can do that again against Florida State here. They will be at home, so that's a big advantage there. Battle of the Virginias. Virginia will host Virginia Tech. Of course, Virginia number 9 in the nation. London Parentes and company continue to play really well, and their defense is what's very, very important. Their defense is probably one of the best in the country. They're so good at stopping teams. Matchup within the top 25, number 23 Purdue will be hosting number 25 Northwestern. Northwestern have been one of the really impressive and surprises this year in college basketball. I'm happy that they're finally ranked at 18-4. They do have Scotty Lindsey, who leads them in scoring with 15 points. He also has 4 rebounds and 2.5 assists per game. Number 19, South Carolina will be on the road to take on LSU. Number 11 and Lonzo Ball, UCLA, will be on the road to take on Washington State. We'll have to see how Lonzo and company fare on the road against the Cougars. As I mentioned, Baylor and Kansas matchup. And then the other matchup within the top 25, number 14, Cincinnati, is on the road to take on unranked Tulsa. Cincinnati 19-2, playing really well. Jacob Evans leads them. He has 14 points per game, 4 rebounds, and 2.5 assists. We'll take our last break of the show. After the break, we're going to talk about some news within basketball, particularly in the NBA. A Hall of Famer, Charles Barkley, and future Hall of Famer, LeBron James, kind of going back and forth. I'll have to talk about what Charles Barkley said yesterday about the King. And reports are that DeMarcus Cousins could be on his way to Phoenix. We'll talk about what those reports are and if it's a good move or a bad move right here at the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. We're going to take our last break. Don't you guys go anywhere.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
The ongoing feud between LeBron James and Charles Barkley has yet another chapter after what Barkley said yesterday. I mentioned in the first segment, we'll have to see if LeBron has any further comments tonight after their game. But, I mean, they're playing Minnesota, so I know the media will ask him about it. But as far as if he wants to say anything else, I think he'll probably just put it to bed tonight, won't say anything. But, I mean, there is still a case. There is still a chance. So the way this basically started, if you don't know, is Charles Barkley started talking about LeBron James as part of his job with TNT. He said he's whining. He said the Cavaliers have given him everything. They have the highest payroll in NBA. They gave him LeBron James. They gave him Iman Shumpert. They brought in Kyle Korver. What else do you need? What else do you need them to do? I think you're kind of just whining and basically not being a whole team player, really competitive, not being really competitive. So LeBron James took that as a shot on him personally, when I don't think Charles Barkley's comments were really made about him personally. So LeBron James answered back in a big way, and he really attacked Barkley personally. He said, "I'm not the one who threw somebody through a window. I never spit on a kid. I never had unpaid debt in Las Vegas. I never said I'm a role model. I never showed up to All-Star Weekend on Sunday because I was in Vegas all week partying." So he really took some shots at Charles Barkley, although he did not mention that he has not won a ring. I'm surprised he didn't go there, because personally, that's where I would have gone. It would have been like, how can you criticize me? I have 3 rings. You have none. I would have probably gone there if I was LeBron, but really I think his comments were kind of taken, I want to say, out of frustration. I think LeBron James is definitely really physically and emotionally fatigued and frustrated with the state of the team. We saw that last week with the comments he mentioned, the arguments he's had with Griffin and with ownership. So I think he's just really, really frustrated. Because LeBron James is not stupid. He sees what the Golden State Warriors are doing. They brought in Kevin Durant literally on July 4th. Usually when you bring in a whole new player, a whole new system, you have to adjust and adapt to each other. The Warriors don't have any issues at all. They've only lost 7 games. I realize they lost 9 all of last year. But you knew they were not going to be going for all-time records like they did last year. So there's more rest involved there. They have not missed a beat, though. Kevin Durant has flowed with them perfectly. And they look almost unstoppable right now, especially with how the Cavaliers did in January. The Cavaliers were 7-8 in January. That's LeBron James' worst month record-wise in his career. So the Cavaliers did not have a great month. LeBron's definitely not happy, and he sees what the Warriors are doing. He sees what they already built and what they added to this team in Kevin Durant, and it's not looking good for the Cavaliers to defend their title. LeBron James sees that, and I think he's just really kind of frustrated and fatigued and just wants more. So obviously Charles Barkley went on TNT and said the comments he said, which I mentioned, and then LeBron James answered back, and then Barkley, of course, answered back yesterday. So during a radio interview on ESPN Radio, Barkley said, quote, "I stick by what I said. I'm not going to make this personal. He was all whiny last week. I'm good and I'm straightforward. I'm never going to get personal on an NBA player." He also went on to say, "I was laughing. Clearly he did some homework. He Googled me and found some things. He was young when I was playing, so I appreciate that, but I'm not upset about it. My criticism was fair, and I'm good with that." So Charles Barkley is definitely not taking what LeBron said personal, and honestly, he shouldn't. Charles Barkley, I'd say of all the analysts in sports, he's the guy who's not afraid to say what is on his mind at all times. And honestly, I really like him for that. He's not the guy that's going to beat around the bush. He's not the guy that is going to not tell it how he thinks, tell it how it is. He's the guy who's going to do that. So I do appreciate him for that because he's not afraid to share his opinion, although some people may or may not believe it, or some people may or may not think it was the right timing, the right manner, etc. So I do sort of condemn and I do thank Charles Barkley for that because I think that's good. I think you have to be fair. I think you have to be honest. And those are the things he does. As far as taking his comments towards LeBron James personal and LeBron James' comments about him personal, he shouldn't. I mean, Charles Barkley knows LeBron's just frustrated and upset. And Charles Barkley, I'm sure, has heard worse than what LeBron James said about him a couple of nights ago. I'm sure on the court, people have trash-talked him worse. Think about Charles Barkley's era. He was one of the, big, bruising, physical, power forward, big men. He wasn't afraid to talk some trash. You know that the guys he was playing against were not afraid to dish it back out to him. I'm sure Charles Barkley has heard worse than what LeBron had to say. So is he going to take it personal? Of course not. I mean, does Charles Barkley really care what LeBron James has to say about him? I think the answer is no, because I don't think Charles Barkley really cares about what anyone has to say about him. He's one of those loose, freely open guys and is not afraid to have someone dish something at him and then return it back the other way. So, I mean, I guess it's good talking points, but I think LeBron's making this a much bigger deal than Charles Barkley is, and I honestly expect it to end really soon. You know the media will be asking LeBron in Cleveland tonight after the game against the T-Wolves about Barkley's comments, but I think he'll probably just put it to bed tonight. But nevertheless, if he does have something to say, we'll of course fill you in here at the Basketball Show. So sticking with the Cavs, LeBron's not been happy. Last couple of weeks, he's told them to make some changes, bring in some playmakers. They need a backup guard. The Cavaliers are working out a few of them. They're working out Mario Chalmers, who LeBron, of course, spent time with in Miami, won a couple of championships with. They're working out Jordan Farmar, as well as Kirk Hinrich, who I feel like has been in the NBA forever. I feel like Kirk Hinrich has been playing forever. And they're also going to be working out, he's not a point guard, but he is a guard and a guy who's really good with the ball in his hands, Lance Stevenson. So Lance Stevenson has really, really struggled since he left Frank Vogel's system in Indiana. He left as a free agent. He went to Charlotte. Big money deal, never worked out. Spent some time with the Pelicans. Didn't really work out on and off the court. He's also battled some injuries. But Lance Stevenson is a guy who in the past has shown us he has some potential. He's younger. He's only 26 as opposed to some of these other guys. Chalmers is 30. Kirk Hinrich's 36. Jordan Farmer is in his 30s as well. Lance Stevenson has shown us in the past he has some potential. Think about how good he was with the Pacers. You could argue he was their most valuable player in Indiana when they were pushing Miami in the Eastern Conference Finals. He also has some history with LeBron James. You think about the whole whispering in the ear incident, being really physical, guarding LeBron. So I'm sure LeBron is definitely really familiar with the game Lance Stevenson has and would not be afraid to add him to the team if management felt that was the best decision. Of these 4 guys here, honestly, I would probably stick with Lance Stevenson if you're going to sign one. I think he's definitely the best option of these 4. Although he's not a true point guard, he's more of a shooting guard, but he's not afraid to have the ball in his hands. He had a lot of triple-doubles in his day with the Pacers, so he's definitely capable of passing. If he can stay healthy, I think this is going to be a good move. I think it would be one of those low-risk, high-reward moves because you're going to be bringing him in, paying him the league minimum. Worst case, he doesn't work out. You keep him on the team for the rest of the year or you cut him. I don't think he'll come in and be a distraction locker room-wise because he's not going to be the star. He's not going to be in the limelight. He can sort of just keep his mouth shut and stick to playing basketball. This is, of course, if he's healthy. He was cut by the Pelicans because he was not healthy earlier in the season. But, I mean, he's shown some flashes. So, I think he'd probably be the best option to bring in. If you're not going to bring in Lance Stevenson, I guess probably Mario Chalmers. He's a true backup point guard. He's younger than Farmar and Heinrich. He also has some chemistry with LeBron James with his time in Miami. So I guess that would make sense too. But for me, I would definitely bring in Lance Stevenson of these 4. I think he's got the most potential. He could probably be the best player to help you as it stands right now. Of course, there is still rumors flying around. The trade deadline is this month, later in the month, so they could bring in maybe someone like Darren Williams from Dallas. Maybe Rajon Rondo. He's definitely not happy in Chicago. What he said over the weekend, leading into Thursday, into Friday, with the whole Instagram post, really just throwing shade at Dwayne Wade and Jimmy Butler. He's definitely going to be not in Chicago next year. So could they ship him out before the trade deadline? There's a possibility there. I think he would be a nice help if he could stay away from being a distraction in the locker room, which he really hasn't done anywhere he's been. So there's an option there, but I think the Cavaliers are definitely not looking to make a trade right away. I think they're going to try and bring someone in, Chalmers, Stevenson, Heinrich, Farmar, and see what they could do from there. Okay, so before we end the show, really quickly, we'll talk about DeMarcus Cousins. DeMarcus Cousins is obviously someone we talk about very often on the show. Earlier, sort of in the season, maybe a month ago, the Kings were reportedly set to offer Cousins a huge contract extension in the summer, which he would have maybe accepted. Upwards of $200 million a year. He's set to be a free agent at the end of the year, so he can go anywhere he wants. But of course, the Kings can offer him the most money because he's already a member of the team. Over $200 million is a ton of money for a guy like Cousins' talent. He's 26 years old. He's averaging 28 points and 11 rebounds. So he's having another good season. He's an all-star for a 3rd time in a row. But he is going to be a free agent at the end of the year for a team that's not really good. 19-30, technically still vying for the 8th seed in the West, but I really don't think they're going to get in the playoffs. So the Kings could be without DeMarcus Cousins next year, and they know that. So they're exploring all options. One of them could be a trade. Reportedly, according to Arizona Sports' John Gambadoro, the Suns and the Kings have been in talks about a possible trade involving DeMarcus Cousins. The trade, to me, doesn't really add up because the Suns would not be giving up either of their top 2 players in guards Eric Bledsoe and Devin Booker. Instead, they would be giving up big men Alex Len, TJ Warren, and draft picks. So for the Suns, if this were to actually go on, I think it'd be a fantastic move. A change of scenery for Cousins is probably the best thing that he could ever do right now because his actions on and off the court aren't always the best. He'd be reuniting with Eric Bledsoe, who he was with at Kentucky. Devin Booker's another Kentucky guy, so I'm sure he's a little familiar with him and his game, although they did not play together in college. So I think that'd be a really good addition to the Suns lineup. You have probably the best big man in the NBA in my eyes in DeMarcus Cousins to go in with these good young guards on the perimeter. So that would be an okay move. For the Kings, I'm not really big on Alex Len. He hasn't really produced since coming out of college from Maryland. TJ Warren, but you have draft picks. That's the one instance that could be okay. Because look at how teams get built nowadays. You either have a star like LeBron James where everyone sort of goes around you and wants to play with you, or you have teams that build through the draft. Think about the Thunder a few years back. They drafted Kevin Durant, they drafted Russell Westbrook, and they drafted James Harden. And then all of a sudden, give it a couple years, they're in the finals. You have the Warriors. They drafted Steph Curry, they drafted Klay Thompson, and they drafted Draymond Green. They won a championship. Now Kevin Durant's there because they're really, really good. So you either have to have a star, which the Kings have a star, but it's Sacramento, plus the team's not any good, so you're not going to attract any big-name, big-money free agents, or you need to build through the draft. So for the Kings, it's got to be the draft option because they're not going to bring anyone else in. And the Kings have not had the best, I guess you can say, record in drafting. They drafted DeMarcus Cousins. That's worked out great. They drafted Tyreek Evans. He was Rookie of the Year, but he never really panned out either. And every other draft has really, really been disappointing. Ben McLemore hasn't really produced. They drafted Thomas Robinson, who was only on the team for a couple of years. Their first-round pick this year is in the D-League. So their record with drafting has not been okay. But if you get a top draft pick, the Suns right now would be a very, very high draft pick, definitely within the top 5. That could be okay if you get this year. The Suns also have the rights to the Heat's 2018 and 2021 first-round picks, although that's a couple of years from now. That was involved in the Goran Dragic deal. So you do have some more picks there. The Suns definitely have a lot of draft picks that they can play with and possibly make some trades to try and bolster this squad. Here's what you have to decide if you're the Kings. Do you think DeMarcus Cousins will honestly sign a contract extension and re-sign with the team in the summer? If you think that answer is yes, then I'm not making this deal. Although the deal does not add up, and there's definitely, you can probably get more for DeMarcus Cousins than what the Suns are offering. If you do not think DeMarcus Cousins is going to sign a contract extension, then you need to trade him. Because if you don't trade him and he goes elsewhere, you get literally nothing. If you make this trade, you're getting something. You're getting something in return, which is obviously better than nothing and will help you a couple years down the road. For me, I wouldn't make this deal. I think you maybe need to hold out, maybe need to see where DeMarcus's head is, and then go from there. Because I'm not big on Alex Len. Draft picks are nice, but I'd much rather have established players than draft picks, especially for a team that has not drafted well. They've been in the lottery for the last 14 years. They have one guy who's a star, DeMarcus Cousins. Other than that, they don't have anyone else. So I'd probably hold out on making this trade at least for the immediate future, but it doesn't hurt to call around, doesn't hurt to ask. If I was a GM, I wouldn't have anyone that's untradeable. Everyone would literally be, I wouldn't say up for grabs, but in discussions about being trades, because there's my job is to make the team better, whether it's keeping guys or getting rid of guys. So for the Kings to talk about possible trades, I don't see any issue with that at all. I definitely think that's something they should be doing, but I would not make this trade, at least not right now. Well, in the show, that's going to be it for today. My name is Ben Brown. Of course, I'd like to thank you for listening here at the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network and on the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. We'll be back in the studio probably next week because Pauline is leaving tomorrow, and then Friday I will not be in. So we have a lot to cover, have to update you over the weekend and all things basketball within the next few days on Monday. Thank you guys for listening. Again, have a good day, and we will see you next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.